Dorian Gray stays young and beautiful, while a hidden portrait becomes older and more disturbing with every cruel choice he makes. When Oscar Wilde published this novel in 1890, he asked whether we confuse physical beauty with moral goodness, and what happens to a person when the consequences of their actions are completely hidden from the world. Dorian's beauty is dangerous because people see his face and assume he is innocent. Look at this diagram of a cognitive bias known as the halo effect. When we observe a single positive trait, like an attractive face, our brains automatically fill in the blanks with other positive qualities, like kindness or honesty. For Dorian, this psychological glitch acts as a perfect invisible disguise. Because he looks like an angel, society projects those qualities onto him. His physical appearance repels suspicion, giving him the freedom to operate without being questioned. Late Victorian London was a society governed by a rigid public sphere, where reputation was everything. But hidden away from those busy streets was the wealthy, insulated environment of artist Basil Hallward's sunlit, flower-filled studio. Basil is busy painting Dorian, capturing a look of absolute, idealized innocence. Sitting nearby is Lord Henry Wotton, a cynical aristocrat who begins feeding Dorian a toxic philosophy. He convinces the young man that youth and beauty are his only valuable assets, and that they will soon fade away. Terrified by the prospect of old age, Dorian looks at his finished portrait and makes a desperate wish. He asks that the canvas bear the burden of aging and rotting, while his own physical body remains perpetually young. That wish creates a fatal fracture. The visual evidence of Dorian's actions is permanently disconnected from his physical body. The canvas will absorb his timeline, leaving his face an empty, static mask. Dorian soon tests the limits of this new reality. He is infatuated with the artistic illusions of the heroines Sybil Vane plays on these grand stages, rather than the human reality of the girl herself. When Sybil experiences genuine love for Dorian, she realizes how empty her acting really is, and her performance plummets. Dorian reacts with cold cruelty. He rejects her utterly, a choice that drives the girl to take her own life. Quietly, tensely, returning home, Dorian looks in the mirror. His real face is perfectly unchanged, but when he turns to the portrait, he sees that the painted mouth has twisted into a sneer of cruelty. He realizes the magical painting is now a living ledger. It will bear the heavy visual burden of his sins. He covers it up and locks it away in a hidden attic where no one can find it. By hiding the painting, Dorian effectively locks away his conscience. Without the friction of visible guilt or the fear of discovery, his behavior begins to rapidly escalate. Years pass. Dorian's physical beauty remains entirely static, untouched by time or vice. But deep in London's underbelly, dark, terrible rumors of his corruption begin to spread. Despite these whispers, high society struggles to condemn him. His wealth and class privilege form a protective barrier, but that innocent face is his primary defense. People look at his pristine features and refuse to believe he is capable of depravity. The portrait hides the truth behind a locked door. Society performs a second act of concealment by trusting the face it can see. Eventually, his old friend Basil Hallward confronts him about the rumors. Dorian takes him to the attic and reveals the rotting, festering canvas. Horrified, Basil begs Dorian to repent. In a sudden rage, Dorian kills the artist. He then blackmails a former associate, Alan Campbell, into disposing of the evidence. Dorian has crossed from passive cruelty into actively destroying others to preserve his reputation. 18 years after Sybil Vane's death, her brother James finally corners Dorian in an alley. But Dorian simply steps into the light. He uses his flawless, 20-year-old face as proof that he couldn't possibly be the man who ruined Sybil nearly 2 decades ago. James, confused by the math of Dorian's youth, lets him go. In this moment, beauty transforms into a functional alibi. Near the end of his life, Dorian makes a feeble attempt at reform. He spares a young woman named Hetty Merton, expecting this deed to heal the portrait. Instead, he finds the painting looks even more grotesque, now wearing the unmistakable smirk of a hypocrite. This balancing scale illustrates the true dynamic. On one side, we have Dorian's active choices, the blackmail, the cruelty, the murder. On the other side, the canvas remains a passive mirror. The painting itself never committed a single crime. It merely recorded Dorian's conscious decisions. Desperate and enraged by this reflection, Dorian grabs the exact same weapon he used to murder Basil. He attacks the canvas, hoping to destroy the only remaining evidence of his true self. In doing so, Dorian commits his final, fatal error. He conflates the record of his sin with the sin itself. He wants the appearance of innocence, but he refuses the burden of accountability. Downstairs, the servants hear a terrible cry. They force their way into the locked room and find the portrait hanging on the wall, restored to its pristine, youthful beauty. But lying on the floor beneath it is a dead, withered, loathsome old man with a knife driven into his heart. The body is so horribly disfigured that the servants can only identify their master by examining the rings on his fingers. For years, Dorian's face prevented people from recognizing what he had become. When his body finally showed the truth, even his servants could not recognize him. Dorian chose every act. Lord Henry influenced him. The portrait hid the consequences, while wealth provided a shield. Society completed the disguise by seeing his beauty and assuming goodness. Rather than creating his corruption, his face offered the protection necessary to maintain it. Would Dorian have gone as far if people had believed the warnings, or are we blaming beauty for choices that were entirely his own?